And we're gonna go on one. All right, we're going. What's up, party personages? Going for a little drive here in the Rizzo rain. I got a question for you, war party. Question is why is it that nowadays people think the fast lane is the slow lane? Every conceivable way that you can think of, people think that the fast lane is the slow lane. And it's to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start speeding down the slow lane because, like, I don't want to break convention. If everybody has made up their mind, that the fast lane is now the slow lane and the slow lane is the fast lane, let's just do it. Let's do it, baby. Do it, baby. But there's problems with that. One is that there's these things called right-hand turns. Like almost all your turns are right-hand, right? Left-hand turns typically have their own lane. Right-hand turns are super dangerous. Like this Jabrinius. Just go, lady. Minivan back there. Go. Anyway. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand. So we're going to actually pull off the road. It's been raining. It's kind of slick. It's been our first big rain for a while, so a lot of oil on the roads. And it's not you. It's not how... Bruh, it's a green arrow, dog. You can just go. It's fine. Your whole family can go. Anyway, roads are slick. And it's not so much what, like, I'm concerned that I would lose traction or something. I just don't want somebody sliding into me. Although this looks bone dry right here. And I think it's because I had a localized weather event. Yeah, I don't know. Just want to pull off the road. Go hang out. I'm going to go hang out at the back of a... Here, let's get you the eyeballs going a little bit. I'm going to be at the back of a burnout Burger King, boy. I tell you what, woo. Heck yeah, we're going to construct something. Oh, let's go up on the hill with the Village Inn. And I don't know if this place was open prior to the Rona, like if they just stopped being a thing. But they only do like breakfast and lunch or something now. They don't do dinners, which kind of whack, honestly. Reminds me of a Denny's. Shout out if you know what a Denny's is. I'm gonna go up in this cul-de-sac because that would be private property there, but here won't. Oh, we can go in a cul-de-sac. Exciting. Oh, look at this, fam. Let's park right here. Shove you guys out so you can see the Village Inn. Okay. Oh, I want to talk to you today about some stuff. War party. We're going to talk to you about a book. Do like a little book club thing. Get this book in frame so you can see it. Brands Don't Win. So that'll focus by Stan Bernard, medical doctor, MBA. So this dude got a medical doctorate and an MBA. And then decided to write a book. You gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. This is what we're gonna talk about today. I got some notes here. I just want to talk about this because this is I'll talk about his book for a little bit, but then I want to kind of expand on the core concepts of his book. We'll do that. Got a little bit of music in the background. Hopefully that doesn't cause problems. Brands Don't Win, How Transcenders... I didn't say transgender, I said transcender changed the game. That'd be a whole different book if he said, how transgenders changed the game. Yeah, I don't know much about the author other than it's interesting. He's got both a medical degree and a business degree, so there's probably a story there. Core premise of the book is that traditional branding focused on logos, messaging, colors, campaign symbols no longer guarantees you market success. The real winners are transcenders, once again, people who transcend, brands that break conventional rules, transform customer expectations, and redefine their categories. I, I'm gonna dive in just a little bit on my own kind of thing here before we go too much further. Listen, dude, the old brands just aren't working. Here's a perfect example. Allegedly, okay, everything I'm saying is allegedly. So you look at the Village Inn, man, that brand, it's just not what it used to be, you know? And I'm not saying that they don't have good food or whatever else, but they're not doing evening service. Maybe they never did. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it's a huge missed opportunity. Look at that parking lot. It's just empty, right? So, you know, that brand is currently not winning. It's paying, you know, you pay by the month for that lease, and it's not, there's hours of the day that it's not making money. You're just never going to convince me that that's a good business model. You know, like you can't serve, you know, dinner. Anyway, you're paying for those lights at night, but you don't use it, you know, so that to me is a missed opportunity. I'm sure they have their own reasons. I'm sure some other MBA said, focus on doing breakfast and lunch on blah, blah, blah. I don't know. To me, it's definitely a missed opportunity. What is a transcender? We'll talk more, too, about my own opinions on what brands aren't cutting it, you know. What is a transcender? A transcender is a man that thinks he's a... No, wrong, sorry. Transcender is a brand that goes beyond the expected and delivers fundamentally new value or experiences. So, you know, something that pushes beyond the boundaries of what you think a brand would do. They reshape the market landscape instead of competing on products and marketing alone. So they just changed the whole thing, right? And I think a lot of people probably back in the day would have thought of Apple computers, you know. They just transcend whatever, you know, they're going to do their own thing. They're going to own operating systems, own design philosophy. You know, they're going to create a cult. Sure. You know, they're dedicated to their products or services or whatever. It's a lifestyle, you know. They're going to go beyond. I mean, even some of that's just Madison Avenue kind of standard marketing anymore. Edward Bernaysian, psychosocial, psychosexual, Pavlovian kind of conditioning. But I think what Bernard is saying here is that they, you know, transcendent. They're really like above and beyond, standing out from the crowd. He talks about why the traditional brands fail to win. Many brands rely on incremental improvements and competing on price and features. They stick to traditional branding but don't evolve with changing customer mindsets. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. If you ever worked in sales, they always tell you, like, don't compete on price. And I say everybody that says that is a clown. It is straight up a clown. If you think price doesn't matter, I don't know what universe you live in, right? Like, price matters. Whether you make something so expensive that it becomes an exclusive luxury item that only certain people can afford, and you better make sure you have a really good product to do that, or you're trying to crowd out all the market share by, you know, making your thing so super cheap, inexpensive, let's call it inexpensive. Price matters. Anyway, so everybody who's ever had a sales manager that said, like, don't compete on price, they're saying don't compete, is what they're saying. Like, I have sold so many things by cutting somebody a break. Like, you give somebody just a little bit of a discount. And that's something that Western culture doesn't get. They haggle in other cultures. They don't want you to compete on price because they don't want to, you know, they don't want a race to the bottom, you know, where it eats up all the the profit and the market and whatever else. And you might be able to say that, hey, listen, we're not going to compete on price, but you have to have something so quality, something so good that you can say price doesn't matter. And like, here's the thing, man. It's going to matter for some of your clientele. Some people are balling, but they're still balling on a budget. So anyway, that's kind of tangential. Features. Yeah, features, obviously what are the features? Like if I were to look at this thing, like what's the feature of this Village Inn? I don't know, man. It's, like I said, it just reminds me of a Denny's. Like, it's kind of what you expect. A chain, greasy spoon cafe, like breakfast foods, like probably some pies, have some. Listen, this is not a dig at Village Inn either. Like, I've eaten there before. They're okay. I just wish they were open later, Why do the traditional brands fail to win? I'm going to tell you something else. Is because they talk about price, but there's a lot of shrinkflation that's happening. Just the quality is not there. The brands don't win, and I don't know that Bernard really. I didn't see this in the book, but it's possible. I just wasn't paying attention. But the brands were like almost like an afterthought. Like somebody had an amazing product, so I think. In my grandparents' time, a lot of those products were made in the U.S. They were quality. They were good products, and the brand was almost like an afterthought. It was like a maker's mark. It was a sign and a seal and a signet of authority, of dominance of the market. Like this is, a Bobco can opener or whatever. And that can opener was just amazing. It was sharp. It stayed sharp. It was durable. It would open up all the cans, Now, get some janky thing from China, it just falls apart. It costs you $1, but let's be real, it opens 2 cans and it breaks. Is that really a value proposition? And then forbid that you should then take and put Bobco brand. Bobco's a fake company, by the way. If you were to put some kind of brand on that cheap made in China garbage, and I'm sorry, man, like most of the Chinese stuff is garbage. That's why I am not personally concerned about these trade war issues that are coming up. Like I just don't need to be flooded with any more cheap Chinese junk personally. I have enough cheap Chinese junk to last me 4 lifetimes. I'm good. What are the 4 attributes of transgenders? I meant transcenders. Radical innovation, customer centricity, authenticity, agility, offering something truly different or better, deep understanding and empathy of the customer's real needs, living brand values generally, not just advertising them, rapidly adapting to market shifts and customer feedback. People say the customer is king. Amazon worked really hard, but, having the empty seat for, having Elijah, I meant the customer. To represent that the customer's always in the room. We need to always be thinking about the customer. That's cool too. I agree. The customer's always right. The customer isn't always right, but to a certain extent, the customer has to be right, because if the customer isn't, you're going to go out of business. And the customer is, it's your lifeblood. The customer is who gives you your money. But I think a lot of people lose touch with the customer. And I think because people mindlessly, they're like, oh, I'm just going to put blah-de-blah ketchup in my thing, not realizing that, it's not in a glass bottle anymore. It's in plastic. The flavor is not as good. There's less ounces, whatever. You can't trust that brand anymore. And so there's been a brand devaluation, a brand a watering down of these brands. And I think that's why a lot of brands now, they're not transcendent. Sometimes it's competition. You have companies that kind of come in and they will just outcompete, and make a similar product. It's like a replacement good. Agility is important, but I think, you just want to stay true to what you're doing. Oftentimes it's because brand equity is built up. Somebody buys that company, And then over time, they, because they want returns on their investment, at a quarterly way, and they just slowly devolve and degrade the brand equity through shrinkflation, scummy business practices or whatever, and just the general enshittification of the consumer process. So I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of brands fail to transcend their markets. Change of the game. Transcenders challenge market assumptions and redefine categories. They often create new markets or make competitors irrelevant. I want you to think of, in the comments below or in the chat, just talk about, give some examples of where some transcendent brands, companies have done this. And this is, I think, the point. This is a takeaway I get from this idea, is that the product matters more than the brand. The brand is there, to market. The brand is there to reach a proto-symbolic understanding of what it is. Like this guy, he's using the pyramid. He's got the unfinished pyramid, so maybe there's some latent Illuminati or something, or Egyptology type deal. He's using black as a cover, and red, and don't is in red, and white, so kind of these danger, bold. So that to me is an example of branding. He's trying to, but ultimately the content of the book is what matters. They say don't judge a book by its cover. Now, if Stan Bernard, or Bernard, however you say that, if Stan, if he makes good books and he writes a lot of good stuff, and he builds up a loyal customer base, they're going to start to look for his name. Will become a brand. His authorship, whether he wants to or not, will be a brand. But you can destroy that brand with, and then people simplify. So it'll be talk to me. Oh man, Stan did that book. It was a good book. So, but ultimately the book's got to be good, man. I think the idea is good. I feel like this guy, if I had to guess, was just tired at some company he's working for, and he just got tired of them just banking on their brand. They're just trying to make it on daddy's name. And I think they're trading on daddy's name, and he got sick of it, and he was like, yo, you got to have the fundamentals. If I had to guess, I don't know what his motivation is. Maybe one day he'll tell us, but I feel like he's probably already done some interviews. Maybe you can look it up and you can see. I'm not necessarily trying to highlight this author, but I just want to highlight this idea about the brands not winning. Prioritize experience and value creation over traditional marketing. First of all, I think all marketing is guerrilla marketing. Invest in a company, culture, innovation, and strong customer relationships. I'm going to throw up if I hear company culture one more time. It's company, culture is that. You culture bacteria. It's stop with the culture. Corporations have taken names, these innocuous names, and they've made them. If I hear another company talk about their culture, and it's a way to simple. Again, it's almost like a branding thing. It's a way for them to simplify an idea. It's here at Bobco, we do things a certain way. We treat people a certain way. We represent our brand a certain way. We represent our company core values a certain way. And the easiest way they say that is culture. But everybody who talks about culture are fanatics, and they're gross. They're not balanced people typically. I'm not going to say everybody, but it's a cheap thing too. Your performance, if you sell terrible at your company, you'll start talking about culture. If you're a terrible boss, you'll start talking about culture. If your culture values, if you have twice the number of culture values than there are 10 commandments, stop. What are you doing? The people have taken the mission statement and then they've just like, here at Bobco, we treat every customer as though they're a Bob. And it's like, it's this incestuous, in-group, it's just a way to create in-group and out-group. Can we just retire? That's a brand that doesn't win. I want to see the brand wording, the branding of the word culture as it represents, to corporate America. If we could retire that would make me feel really good. I'm gonna have to come up with a new word. I don't have that. Some consultant can come up with a new word and just take that horse out behind the barn and shoot it. Because, like, you are a completely disingenuous person if you unironically bring up culture to me. Like, first of all, if you have to talk about it, it means you're not it. And then, I don't know. Anyway, that's not what the author's saying. That's what I'm saying. Invest in company culture, innovation, strong customer relationships. Innovation is really important. Again, so you get into this culture, this cult, like, company cult, and they stifle innovation. It becomes dogmatic. And one of the reasons is if you've done well, like, hey, listen, here at Kodak, allegedly, we've made film forever and we're really good at it. We're the best. And you know how many millions of dollars we've made, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, cool story, bro. But like the digital camera, which is in my phone now, has just made film largely irrelevant. So people just rest on their laurels, or in this case, they rest on the brand and they stop innovating. And if you've ever worked at a company, it's really frustrating, because if you try to innovate, you're like, hey, I have a good idea. And they're like, we don't like those. We don't like ideas. Ideas are bad. Because the bigger a company gets, the older a company gets, the older a brand gets, it really wants to just land on the strength. It like idolizes the brand. It idolizes the trademark. It becomes a religious cult that worships that. Any dissent is seen as, problematic, even if it's a loyal opposition that's trying to move the ship forward. And you have to have some resistance. You have to have some type of integrity, like internal integrity checking mechanisms, like, hey, is this really a good idea? But like, if you don't even hear Bob Jr. out at Bobco, like, you have no idea whether his ideas are good or not. Like, oh, I didn't have that idea, so it must be dumb. It must be a bad idea. And so they have this kind of normalcy bias that happens, and they're trying to protect the ship. Big companies, big ships have small rudders because they don't want to get dashed into the rocks. There's all these. That's one of the reasons you have all these bureaucracies, is to protect their goose that lays that golden egg, from being, because, you can have these like Theranos type fake sociopathic people that just ruin investors' money and brands and such. So I get it, right? But if you stop innovating, you're dead. Any business that is not growing is dying. And to be fair, some businesses that have strong brands that don't innovate, they continue to grow. But then what happens is, because they didn't innovate, they reach their concept of what the market is, And that's another thing that just typically happens with publicly traded companies. Like, honestly, you can shrink and still make a lot of money, or define success however you want to do that. Typically, if you're not a charity, it's got to be making some form of money, something. It doesn't mean you can't be doing good for the community too, but it's a business. Yeah, if you're not growing, you're shrinking, and if you're shrinking, you should be shrinking strategically. Again, that's not necessarily what the author is saying, but he does mention, that you got to invest in the company culture, innovation, and strong customer relationships. And then, see, even that wording, like, I hate, like, strong customer relationships. What does that mean? Like, just having your finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist of what customers want. The U.S. auto market is so gross right now because it thinks it knows what. The U.S. auto market right now wants K-trucks. That's what they want. They don't care if they tip over. That's fun for them. Generation Z, Alpha, Generation Broke wants a cheap truck that's like 10 grand or less that they can put bales of hay and Amazon packages and whatever else, and cheap gas, and that it can go around and they don't need all this frivolity. But what they're being marketed is, $50,000 boomer mobiles, giant SUVs, gas guzzling, massive lithium ion cobalt batteries that, suck down coal. And that's not what people want. People want cool little cute looking trucks, man. They want a little truck, little K trucks, anyway. That has a lot to do with government getting in the way and safety regulations, and there's a whole thing. There's a lot of videos that are done on why we can't have K trucks, and hopefully that changes. And they're starting to import them, and then states are pushing back, like, oh my gosh, K trucks, Japan, But that's what people want, and they're cool looking. So cool looking, they make sense, and they talk about them, the pyramid people or whatever. They talk about like how we need to have a green planet and we need to do this and we need to do that. But then when you're like, okay, so can we import, K trucks from Japan that like, low horsepower, just enough juice to, pull a load and go around town or whatever. Like, oh no, we can't have anything that common sense like that. We need to have a massive, they talk about carbon footprint and all these other spurious. See, culture, it's fake. It's all hypocrisy. Your brand doesn't win if you're BS, right? If your brand is fake, right? If you spend more money, I'll give you a perfect example, allegedly, of Ford, allegedly. This is a big thing for me. I'm going to give some specific examples. I'm going to call some people out. So first, before I do that, the author would probably want me to talk about companies like Airbnb, Tesla, and other. These are people that have transcendent. They've transcended their markets, right? They, a whole new concept of what a hotel would be, a whole new concept of, listen, electric cars run on coal, but who cares? Like the idea, the framework is there later, and then if you find electricity is not an energy source, it's an energy transmission vehicle for your vehicle. And so, okay, so maybe your Tesla runs on coal, but maybe one day it won't, right? Maybe it'll run on some kind of sodium nuclear reactor or fission reactor, who knows, right? So just by having the infrastructure to show people, hey, remember we used to do this, we can make electric cars again. So that's transcendent in that way. Now, let's talk about some brands that aren't transcendent. Ford titanium truck. This time, every time I see this, it makes me puke. Listen, man, Ford used to be cool, bro. Ford, despite the fact that Henry Ford, look it up. This is not allegedly. This you can find, just Google it. Was an anti-Semite. But anyway, Henry Ford, complex man, also believed in paying people a living wage that was, Anyway, I'm sure he had his reasons for his hate. I don't agree with them. He was a complex man. He tried to do, Henry Ford did some cool stuff too. Henry Ford tried to make soybean doors. I mean, he tried to do things. Okay, he had the good sense to know that your vehicle should only come in black. Anyway, now you can't even hardly get a vehicle that's black. Burgundy. You get these just gross colors. Like, I don't want my car to be wine colored. Stop it. We're talking about Ford. Oh yeah, Ford Platinum. Ford Titanium. Bro, there's no titanium in that Ford. Most of those Fords are made in Mexico. Okay, so they're El Fordos, right? And allegedly, they're definitely made in Mexico. Not all of them. Some of them are, I don't know, Dearborn maybe still. I don't know. But a lot of those, some are made in Germany, whatever. But there's no titanium in that, right? It's not titanium. That thing is a big hunk of steel and plastic and whatever else. And the part of the vehicle that says titanium or that says platinum is an anodized plastic. It's like a metal foil over plastic. It's the giant gaslighting. You spend anywhere from 50 to 70 grand on that truck. King Ranch, whatever. It's not just Ford, fam. A lot of these companies are doing this. And I hate to pick on the anti-Semite Henry Ford. He's been dead for years. But anyway, dude. So yes. So they use these titanium because those words have value. Because titanium is strong. It's associated with value. It's associated with strength. It's an aircraft, like engineering, right? Like if you have a sweet bike, it has like titanium and parts. Aluminum is a good too, but you make beer cans out of aluminum. We don't want to mention that. Oh, that's not as good as steel. The metal fatigue isn't as good. Whatever. So they say titanium, which is lighter and stronger, also more brittle. But what makes me sick about that is that, is there platinum in that Ford Platinum? Yeah, and like the catalytic converter. Yeah, you got a little bit of platinum and, anyway. These brands don't win because because they're lying to you. They're gaslighting. They're using words and they're robbing the words of their meaning and they're robbing their brand. The Ford truck, they make TikToks about the fucking Ford Ranger. When's the last time they made one? You're like, no, that's not a Ford Ranger. That thing that they've made now is not a Ford Ranger, right? They used to make these like A-frame steel built Ford truck was a real thing. The problem is if you had like those trucks still exist. You'll still see a truck from like the 60s, a Ford. Those things were bulletproof, but they rode like crap. They were bumpy, and so soccer moms didn't like it. There was a farm truck, bro. You hit a stump and like, oh man, no, you're fine. You're good. So it's just a different thing. Planned obsolescence is the whole other thing. I bought allegedly honest tea. Allegedly honest. So I bought this tea, allegedly, and it was, it was like honest tea. This is years ago. Like no preservatives or whatever they were trying to push, like this, get it? It was like a pun, like honesty. And this is honest tea, like there's no preservatives, there's no... Dude, and the bottle was fake AF. First of all, it's in plastic, like almost everything's... We need to get back to glass. Microplastics are terrible for you, they're terrible for the environment. Stop saying that you care about the environment. If you're pushing out plastic, you're a liar. Glass is better, right? First of all, everybody knows this. If you've drinketh, if you've had a Coke from Mexico with real sugar, so I was just hating on Mexico, but let's give a shout out where it belongs. Mexican Coca-Cola is better, straight up, right? It just tastes better. Ask anybody. Why? Because they're not using fructose corn syrup, and it's in a glass bottle. Revolutionary. Why is it that they can have that in Mexico? I don't know. But you can't have that. You have to have it in plastic. You can't be trusted as an American. You might break the bottle. Dude, so what? The bottles break every once in a while. At least they're not leaching all the chemicals out of the... I'm not saying bipolyphenol A, but whatever's in that plastic, bro, gets in the sun. You're not... Like it... Okay, let's say that the plastic's like super perfect, allegedly. Allegedly. Because I'm saying big company names, so I just got to keep saying that word. Anyway... Your brands have devalued yourself. Your brands will win. You can't just use the brand to say... I'm going to turn on this little red light right here. You can't just say that the brand can carry you anymore. It's lazy. You're lazy. You're probably fat. You're not efficient lazy. You're like fat lazy. And, you're just not trying. It's inauthentic. So your brand has to mean something, and the brand is like an afterthought, and it's the seal that you put on after the product is finished to say, hey, this is a good product. So anyway, I went a little bit further than what this gentleman that has, twice as many degrees as I do would say about it. Go buy the book, read it for yourself. Maybe you'll get a different takeaway. He's got a couple of people on here that, are, hey, this is a good business book. But I like the idea. I think he's onto something in the general sense where in America today, brands don't mean anything. New brands tend to have more value. They have to be transcendent. They have to transcend the reality. And you can't just rest on your laurels anymore because those victories are so old. And it's uncool. The other thing is you gotta get each new generation. And more than just marketing will get you there. Like, try a new Pepsi Coke thing, all right, cool, like super edgy, new, cool artist for your generation, B. Check it out. Drink new Edge Cola. And you're like, cool. But if that cola tastes like dirt water and gives you the beatus, then nobody's about it, you know? And so your brand is just now associated with dirt water and beatus. So think about it. Not everything that was old was terrible. And you can have an old brand be transcendent if your old brand sticks to its values. A lot of you guys that run companies need to stop letting the customer's not always right, and if the customer's always right, that means the investor can't be. So this whole concept of investor primacy that's causing you to devalue your company's brands and everything else, you know, it is just shameful. Stop it, right? Like, primacy? First of all, you got the order all mixed up. You're putting investors first, right? Then you're putting the customer. Then you're putting the employee. You know, I don't know what the exact order should be, but the investor should be it should be shut up. That's where investor primacy needs to be. And don't tell me that court cases, because court cases didn't. They let Henry Ford run his business how he wanted. The Dodge brothers had to take a hike and start their own company because they weren't going to tell Henry Ford how to run his company, whether or not he hated Jews. And maybe he thought the Dodge brothers were Jews, and that's why I don't know what his deal is. Anyway. Where are we going with this? The customer, you have the right to refuse service to everybody, but if you take a crap on your customer, you're done as a business. Bud Light, nah, the brand's done, bro. It's dunzos. They're never bringing that brand back. Right? They offended everybody. They offended the straights. They got the gays all pissed off at them. The transcenders. Right? They got everybody upset with them. That was a fiasco. And part of it was because they didn't know who their customer base was. And you can't push, you know, if you're like hardworking, straight dude bro guys, blue collar, not artsy, whatever, that's your market. And then you decide, you know, hey, we want to gain more market. We need to make more money. Blah, 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 return on blah, 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 blah. You know, at some point, something happens. You know, it might take a long time. It might take 10 years, but like the damage is irreparable. So, allegedly, who knows? Buy Ambev if you think I'm wrong. You know, somebody needs to buy that stock because I ain't. Yeah, you could kill a brand. You know. You could kill a brand. You can kill a brand. So it's kind of a bit of a catch-22 because I'm telling you to innovate, but you got to be careful. You can't alienate when you innovate. You know, and so some common sense is needed. Common sense is uncommon. Man, this video is going long, but I feel like I'm just cresting the top of that pyramid, baby. In the comments, talk about a brand that used to be super, and I don't mean cool as in like the perception was cool. I mean like an awesome brand that had quality products that is now garbage. Put it in the comments, allegedly. I won't even mention this company, right? It's the square root of the answer. It's a little code for those who know. A little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know what I mean? So it's a skateboard shoe. Used to be made in America, you know, like reasonably priced, a little bit expensive. Not like Air Jordan's price, but, you know, reasonable. Like, you're still going to the mall. It wasn't like some brokey shoes. But they were cool, you know. They've been largely unchanged since 1960-something, you know. It's a cool skateboard brand. They started making their stuff in China, Vietnam, you know. And whatever they were doing, not in America anymore. Okay, well, that's cool, but are you selling those shoes there, or are you selling to us? Because if you're selling to us, you know, and what's the value, bro? If you have a cool Vietnamese shoe brand, that's fine. Somebody, please, in my name, and give me stock in the company. Make a cool Vietnamese shoe for skateboarding and rice paddies called Big Boy Shoes. Okay? Please, and send me a pair or 5. But anyway, so this American skateboard brand of shoes, like, they're just garbage now, bro. Like, you pay more for them. the brand has been devalued. The brand doesn't win anymore. The brand is DIE. It went full woke. It went full woke in an age of based or whatever. They didn't get the memo. And it is slow degradation, and it just took something. And part of it is, too, it's not always the company's fault. It is if you're a sucker and you don't see what's happening and you let it happen. But part of it is these investors, again, the shareholder primacy concept, is they buy into cool brands. They're like, hey, kid, what shoes are those that you wanted me to get? Oh, they're the square root of the answer shoes. And they're like, all right, cool. I want to buy that company or whatever. And then, they just... So the truest sense of the word culture, whatever, the way that the business is run, not in the gross way that people say, the culture, but the actual, how the business was run and their philosophies and such, they just, they degrade those, because they just want an art. Those people don't care. They're prostitutes. They don't care. They're pimps. They're worse than prostitutes. They're pimps. And they just pimp out your brands. So don't fall for it. I'm not saying to be a pimp, but don't be a simp either. And don't just buy a brand because it's a brand. Like, real talk, if a brand is whack because it's like low quality now, but the name, was pushed on like some social media, and there's some no-name brand but is like good quality, who cares? Rock the no-name. If you're cool enough, you can carry it. Like if you're cool enough and your style and your whatever, your personality, like influencers can carry the brand. That's why do you think these brands pay influencers? They pay influencers, big boy shoes. When somebody makes that, they're going to pay me because I carry influence, right? And whatever I rock becomes cool by its nature because I rock it. So don't trip. And anyway. Grandpa's getting angry. Stop falling for it. Don't pay extra. You know what I mean? This is the last thing I'll say, and then I'm gonna wrap this video. I once bought a brand of watch that I knew was a fake, and I didn't care because the fake was so good. I don't care about the brand, bro. You know what I mean? Probably was made in the same factory. Just didn't have the little logo. I don't care. Thing was self-winding. It was beautiful, like some booty. It was a nice watch. That's it. That's all I got to say to you. Brands don't win, but you can. You know what I mean? Don't fall for it. Now, if a brand is holding it down, if a brand is representing its core value, its customers. And I'm not saying like the investors that listen, they're giving you money, but like if that company's so good, why does it need investors? Why is it constantly operating in debt? Like at some point, like, okay, during the growth period, and if it is have investment, it better be paying dividends. And maybe that's a way to give, the customers, maybe not so much, but definitely customers want quality and the employees want ownership. Right, so if you're selling stock, it should be to your employees, right? So they got it all twisted, the order of this. So America, get your mind right. I'm out.